To check that your trailer is charging correctly, first set your multimeter to 20 volts. Place the positive and negative prongs on the corresponding battery terminals and check that you have a static charge between 12.5 and 13.5 volts. Start the ignition on the towing vehicle and you should see the voltage begin to increase. This should land somewhere between 13.5 and 14 volts. To troubleshoot charging further, place a battery tester onto the battery terminals and cycle through the test program to ensure that it has sufficient charge and health. Remove the terminals on the battery and using a piece of sandpaper, lightly sand each of the terminals to ensure good connection. Ensure that you check all of the cables around the engine, the starter motor, the hydraulic lift motor, and the battery itself to ensure that there are no breaks in the cables. Check the two-pronged fuse that is situated near the battery. If it has blown, replace accordingly. You can also check the higher ampage fuses that are situated near the battery. To do this, you would use your multimeter on the continuity setting, placing the positive and negative prongs on either side of the fuse, and you should hear a continuous beep. If not, this suggests there is a break in the fuse. Check that the electrical cable is in good working condition. If you're unsure, use another one to test and replace if necessary. You can check that the height of the pins are all sufficiently correct, and if any have been lowered, using a pair of pliers, pull these out to the same height. Water can get in behind your electrical adapter on the trailer. Unscrew the 3 bolts and remove this, drying any excess water behind and replacing any breaks in the cable. To check the connection between the battery and the end of the electrical cable, you can remove the two-pronged fuse and place your positive multimeter prong into the socket of the fuse that goes towards the towing vehicle, not back to the battery terminal. Place your negative prong onto pin 10 and you should hear, with the continuity setting on, a beep to ensure that the connection has not been broken. To test the electrical cable, make sure your setting on the multimeter is continuity. Then, holding each end of the cable, tap one pin with the negative prong and tap the corresponding pin with the positive prong. And you should hear a beep, and then move around the other pins and ensure there are no other beeps. If you hear a beep on another pin, this could indicate a break in the circuit. To test the connection between the trailer electrical port and the battery, make sure that you remove the two-pronged fuse from in and around the battery and place your negative prong inside the fuse socket that goes off towards the towing vehicle, and place your positive prong inside the pins of the electrical adapter until you hear a beep from the continuity setting of your multimeter. There should only be one beep, and this should indicate that you have a complete connection and complete circuit. If there is a break, you may hear it beep on more than one pin. To check that the motor on the hydraulic lift is receiving sufficient voltage, place your multimeter negative prong on the negative battery terminal and your positive multimeter prong on the live connection on the motor solenoid. You should see on a voltage setting a sufficient voltage. Check sufficient voltage to your motor is present by changing to the DC voltage setting on your multimeter. Press the negative prong onto your negative of the motor solenoid and the positive prong to the live terminal. If no charge is present or if it's low, place your negative prong onto the live solenoid terminal and your positive prong onto the negative terminal of the battery. This is to determine which cable is faulty. If there is a sufficient charge, then place your negative prong onto the negative terminal of the solenoid and your positive prong onto the positive terminal of the battery. To see if your motor solenoid is receiving any power, place the negative prong of your multimeter on the negative terminal of the solenoid and your positive prong on the live terminal. Set your DC voltage setting on the multimeter and it should show 0. If you press the lift button whilst holding this, you should see a sufficient voltage of 12 to 13 volts. If not, your solenoid is likely faulty. You can also check the LED blocks have not got broken filaments.